Now, Capricorn is very unlike many other signs, and what I'm going to do in this podcast is to give a different interpretation. Maybe not so different, but to come at Capricorn from a completely different tangent, to try to understand the inner nature of what it means to be the archetypal personality called Capricorn. Where we're going is we are trying to find the definition, the most accurate definition for Venus in Capricorn. But for that, we need to understand what Capricorn is, because it is from Capricorn that we're going to get Venus. And we've already talked about what Venus is, in many of the podcasts that I have on Venus, in different signs. But this is the first time we're going to actually look for Venus within Capricorn. And for us to do that successfully, we need to understand the internal dynamics of what Capricorn means. Now, Capricorn is unique because it represents the end stage of a very long process. That's just it. There's no way to sugarcoat this. Capricorn is a march, and it's a march through a desert. The desert is one where the individual is looking for a meaning to their own existence, because that meaning has been denied them internally. For some reason, they are not able to connect with those early formative year processes that help an individual recognize who they are. It's blocked. And so one of the maxims that I basically invented in astrology is that when something inside you is blocked, then you must externalize it as a way to resolve that which is blocked. Because the internal space is connected to the external space. There's really no difference. The boundary is your skin. But the skin is apparent. Because there's really no difference. Because it is the external that is constantly being woven into the internal. Alright? There is no discontinuity per se. So, the essence of Capricorn is to resolve this internal blockage. And the only way to do that is to engage with the material world. And the problem that comes with engaging with the material world is that you gotta engage with other people. That's the problem. Everything else in the physical world is not as complex as the relationship with other people. That is, people who share the same collective type of motivations as you do. Everyone is looking for meaning to their own existence. And Capricorn is the means by which you now need to navigate this reality so that you come out on top. So that Capricorn by its very nature is highly competitive. That's really what it is. Just by virtue of what it needs to accomplish, it is competitive. But the competition is defined by what? Mastery. And the only way to master something is trial and error. That's really what it is. It's the nature of hard work. When they say hard work, what they really mean is that you get to try something over and over again. And you don't get to try it over and over again if you're successful the first few times. The reason why you need to try over and over again is because you're nothing but an absolute failure. And so you keep trying, you keep failing, you keep trying, and you keep failing. That is the Capricornian journey. I'm not going to sugarcoat it for you. If you have significant placements in Capricorn, this is your story. Now, what is being tested here is not the end result per se. It is the strength of character. Because the significant placements you have in Capricorn, those placements have to lead. And they will have to lead in such a way that they impact the lives of a great number of people. And in order to be ready to lead, you have to understand what it is like to undergo significant frustrations. And the aim of that frustration is to bring out all your pretensive natures. You must get to a place where you are genuine in your pursuit. And the only way to do that is to face the resistance that is equivalent to your nature. That's what Capricorn means. You have to face your own devil. And you are your own devil. You are your own Saturn. And so you need to face your own Saturn so that the structure of the resistance in your life is proportional to your nature. You must wrestle with your own beast. And in so doing, come face to face with all elements of your subversive nature. The test of fire makes for fine steel. And where you're going with Capricorn is to be the best, to be on top. And it's not the underhanded tactics that gets you to the top. Because that's why I said the Capricornian journey is very different. It's not like just seeking for power because you want to seek power. It's not the intrinsic or instinctual motivation that Scorpio has to just grab power. No. Capricorn is symbolized by the mountaintop. The steeper the mountain, the more sure-footed the mountain goat has to be. Otherwise, it's going to trip and fall. And there are certain parts of the mountain that only the mountain goat can get to. Why? Because it has learned mastery over all of its emotions, all of its outputs. It has become a symbol that others can look up to for growth. That's what it means to be Capricorn. And let me tell you something. You don't get to be that after failing a few times. No, you are going to a place that very few people will ever get to. And the only thing that can get you there is your resourcefulness, your perseverance, your ability to believe in your own destiny. And how does this happen? Well, it starts very early, really. The Capricornian in the beginning is racked by inferiority complexes. So many in all areas. It depends on whatever placement, whatever Capricorn needs to produce. Whatever functional light or planet Capricorn needs to produce. That's what will determine the type of inferiority complex you start off with. And in the case of Venus, the inferiority complex usually revolves around the way that they look. Because Venus really is a perception of beauty. Alright? And that beauty, that perception of beauty, is a harmonization process. It is the ability to see the intrinsic similarities between things and how these similarities connect to one another. But the training ground for identifying these similarities always starts with the material body. Your material senses. Because they are the things that key you into a material world. So that the Venus in Capricorn starts off feeling very, very, very unsexy. Let's put it that way. They don't like their body. They find all sorts of reasons. They are racked with doubts. And they usually get confirmation of this from the way that other people mock them and other people taunt them. So they develop that complex naturally. The funny thing is, these are the people that turn into the beauties that you cannot imagine. That is a body that is literally sculpted. Because that's what it means. Alright? But it always starts off from a place of insignificance. Something that you can easily discard because, you don't give the person two thoughts. Either they look too lanky and lean, or they too thin, or the neck is too long, or their arms are too long. There's always something that makes you just write them off very early when it comes to being a great beauty. But just give it a little bit of time, especially after the first Saturn return, and then you are stunned and shocked by what you're looking at. It's a literal transformation of the body. Okay, but that's not just where it ends, because in order for Capricorn to get to its destination, it needs a lot of practice, and the practice itself is a search process in some way, and that is what is typified by Sagittarius, because the journey towards Capricorn starts far earlier in the natal chart, in the zodiac, you see. But I'm not going to go into all that. If you want that detail, you need to come join my classes. Okay? I'm only going to start the narrative from Scorpio, because Scorpio is where it all starts. Scorpio is what provides the actual energy, psychic energy, that becomes Capricorn. Scorpio is just where the alchemy takes place. The motivation for Capricorn starts much earlier in the zodiac. And the reason why I'm saying this is because that is the way to look at a natal chart. That's what natal synthesis is. You have to understand the story of how one thing becomes another. Okay? Because that's what you're looking at in the natal chart. It's a journey. Alright? But we're just going to take it from Scorpio for reasons, I don't want to give out all my book of tricks. So, that scorpionic experience is where the transformation takes place. And if it is done correctly, it becomes the Sagittarian experience, which is an expanding search space. A search space that is just expanding beyond your horizons. And the problem with any type of space is the ability to search that space, especially since the space is expanding. So what you need is a map. Because without a map, you're going to get lost. And that map, when you open it, you don't get to see anything on it. There are no features on it. There's only an X. It's a blank piece of paper. There's only an X marked somewhere there. And you're scratching your head wondering, how are you going to get to an X when you don't even know where you are? There are no features on the map to tell you exactly how to get to this point marked X. You don't even know where that X is. Well, that is the conundrum with Venus in Capricorn. Because Venus itself is a vector. It is a sense of, smell, if you want, or a sense of taste. But it's a nose, you hear the thing, you hear your nose knows where it wants to go. It's a notional direction that is a vector that arises within an individual that helps them to understand what it is that they desire. Even more so, it helps them understand why they desire this pleasure. So it's a pleasurable instinct. It lets you identify that aspect of reality that you are naturally drawn to, because there's a similarity within yourself and that aspect of reality. This is how you get to read the map. This is how you get to know where you are. But initially, with Venus in Capricorn, the entire thing is blocked, so that the individual has no connection really to the quality of their material existence. They hear a sound, okay. They smell something nice, okay. But they don't know how to value it. Because the process of valuation means that you must first establish a datum, a reference within yourself. It is that reference which you now extend to anything that you value. So that the process of valuing anything really is a process of self-valuation. But when Venus is in Capricorn, this process is blocked. There is no datum inside, meaning there is no starting point on the map. So if you don't know where you are, how the heck are you going to know where you're supposed to go? This is the problem. So that everything that they appreciate needs an external reference for valuation. And one common way in which we all value things is money. Money is that external frame of reference that is created so that everyone can agree on an objective reference frame for value. But the original valuation of money, whatever money is, has to be subjective. It's internal. It's the way all measurements are calibrated in the first place. A kilogram is only a kilogram because somebody defined it as such at some point in time. And they defined it based on the internal notion of what weight should be. Then they now objectify it and it becomes a standard. And that's really what it is with Venus in Capricorn. They are drawn towards standards because they use standards as the guideposts to navigate this blank sheet of paper that is supposed to be their map. If you take the guideposts away, these people have no idea what valuation should be. They don't know what they're looking at. They don't know what it's supposed to mean. To them, that is. And some people might find this very weird. If you know someone with Venus in Capricorn, you might find this notion of value very weird. Because they always default towards external valuation. And so everything that is an external source of value is important to them. The bank account is important. Their net worth is important. The way they carry themselves, the way they comport themselves is important. They have all these external references for what is supposed to be an internal sense of value that they are constantly watching these metrics. And so they come across as being sort of frozen or tied to these metrics. Because what Venus is an outflow of a natural sense of rhythm. One that is so natural that people are able to implement such natural rhythm as blending colors together, blending sounds together, cooking a nice meal because you can blend different tastes together. It's this blending that creates the sense of harmony that we define as a sense of beauty. They don't have this. They have to construct it externally. And it becomes a lifelong goal. Because what they're really fighting is that internal notion of ugliness, disharmony, that crept into their minds and became sticky within their minds when they first started looking at themselves in the mirror. Venus in Capricorn is devastating for women. It's like the moon in Capricorn. It's like they're frozen. They don't know how to receive Venus. That's really what it is. Okay? Because Venus is now subject to this climbing process. This process of climbing to the mountaintop. So that Venus becomes something that they look forward to achieving rather than a quality of everyday experience regarding the nature of pleasure. You see the dilemma? And in the meantime, until they eventually come to understand what this Venus in Capricorn is, they have to make do with surrogates. Alright? And that may now come across as a tendency towards ambition, towards money, because that which is rejected internally must be resolved externally. So they pursue this in the world. They pursue that Venus in the world. And make no mistakes, no matter what they tell you, they pursue it in an obsessive way. Because you can't get to Capricorn without going through Scorpio. That's really what it is. And it's in Scorpio that all the problems begin, because when you don't like your body, or you don't feel beautiful enough, or you don't feel valuable enough, then how are you going to experience intimacy? Men with Venus in Capricorn, they're not averse to paying for sex. They might even prefer it. Women with Venus in Capricorn, they don't know the difference between intimacy and money, really. They really don't. I mean, the way their mind works is very basic when it comes to this issue. Alright? Everybody else has this internal compass that tells them what value is supposed to be. These people don't. So you're telling them that one person is more valuable than the other? How are they supposed to know? What's the evidence? What's the proof? Well, if one person has made it in life and has got a lot of money, that's the proof, isn't it? Now, some other people might look at this as, wow, that is really not the way to do this. But good luck with that. These people deal in the real world. They've been experiencing rejection from as far back as you can imagine. They understand how ugly the real world is. And so when they can grab onto something tangible that represents value, then that's it for them. And you cannot change their minds. Because that's the whole point about Venus. That's why it rules Taurus. Because once it finds a datum for its perception of value, then that's it. It doesn't move anymore. And it works for them. So why should they change it? You can have all these wonderful notions of what you expect Venus to be. These people don't understand that. Venus for them is tangible, it's functional, it has utility, it is useful, and it is valuable. Externally, that is. So it's a beautiful house, it's a beautiful car, beautiful clothes, beautiful bags, beautiful shoes, a wonderful bank account, a wonderful life. Otherwise, they have no idea what you're talking about. And when the Venus in Capricorn cannot hit these standards, they suffer. They suffer because what grips them is the kind of inferiority complex that they cannot shake. They become negative and very cynical. So that when Venus is in Capricorn, one of the ways in which Venus expresses itself in terms of love and all that is through money. Gifts of money. But Venus in Capricorn is not a slouch. They're not lazy either. Remember, this is someone who is harboring a sense of self-rejection. And they make a decision very early, right? To overcome that which makes them feel that way. Now, in one of those examples of how the deep internal mind sculpts external reality, these people turn into beauties. I've talked about that. Because they have this drive within them to overcome these limitations, these early limitations. And so they work very hard. They make the decision very, very early not to express Venus the way everybody else does because of that pain of rejection regarding their body, that is. And so even when they grow up, they do not tolerate overt displays of affection. If you're going to date this person, you're going to have to be very formal and almost businesslike. No hugging and kissing on the street and making them feel, because they're very self-conscious. You're going to make them feel very awkward. It's not that they don't feel the same way as you do. They just don't know how to show that anymore. They have trained all of that out of their system, and you're not going to change them. And so Venus in Capricorn is usually drawn towards older, more mature people. The men tend to marry older. The women also tend to marry older. Now, that ability to marry older represents a drive that sits deep within them. They are aspiring always for the mountaintop. Now, in the unevolved or rapacious Venus in Capricorn, they only live to acquire. And that's all they know, acquisitiveness. They're constantly trying to acquire things as a way of reinforcing this inferiority that they feel deep inside them. This is not the way to live. Because even though they realize what's going on, they have no power to change it. And so they experience a crippling aloneness. It's very difficult to describe. Only those with Venus in Capricorn or Moon in Capricorn can really tell you what this feels like. It's an aloneness. It's not loneliness. It's aloneness. And it comes from the fact that you can't really share who you are with other people, even though you are constantly surrounded by other people. And so since their subjective experience is not something they can share, the entire emphasis of their existence pours into what they define as an objective experience. And within that objective experience, the main issue concerns value and the pursuit of value. And so they're very competitive. They're prone to envy and jealousy. It inspires them. It makes them work harder. And they undergo more than their fair share of rejection. You know, people don't really understand. What you see all the time is a managed creature. Someone who is literally holding themselves together by the power of their will. Now, occasionally they have slips and they fall apart when they're racked with so much doubt and insecurities. It's in those moments that you really realize that these are some of the most loving people. It's almost like they're trapped in a cage. They cannot express this huge warmth that they feel inside them. They feel it makes them weak. They fear that it will make them vulnerable, and once they're vulnerable, they will be rejected. This is the typical dynamic when Venus is in Capricorn. It can be a very debilitating placement. Now, but it's never alone in the natal chart. It's there for a reason, and usually it has to do with the perception of a journey. Because these are people who ultimately become wealthy just by sheer effort, you know. It's not normal to fail 50 times and to keep going. It simply isn't normal. Not very many people can pick themselves up after each fall. These are experts in that. Okay? And you can't really stick a thermometer inside them to really know exactly how they're faring. They're closed. Very few people actually get to see what's happening inside. And if you could see it, you would see an individual that is racked by so much doubt, and yet they somehow manage to pick themselves up and to keep going. They just don't quit. That's what it means for Venus to be in Capricorn. They simply don't know what quitting is like. Now, these are not very good, like I've said, for hot, passionate love and things like that. Like you would find emotional outpourings in Venus in Cancer or Venus in Pisces or Venus in Scorpio. You don't have the hot-blooded passion like you would have with Venus in the fire signs. This is Venus in an earth sign, and it's not the earth sign of Taurus. It is the objectifying, externalizing earth sign of Capricorn. So literally, it's the establishment. So that Venus in Capricorn is always concerned about what other people think of it. Of course, it won't let you know that. It will make you try to think that it doesn't care. But the fact is that it absolutely does. And so it trades one fear of rejection for another. I mean, the original fear of rejection is a personal thing. People thought they were ugly, either as a man or a boy or a girl. People just didn't vibe with them. And they perceived it as having to do with the beauty that they possess or the lack of it. And so this is what starts the journey. But ultimately, what they do is they end up trading this off by working very hard, pushing themselves to the maximum, growing into great beauties, even though they may not still be able to see it. Okay? They need all the external paraphernalia to assure themselves of their beauty, even though they turn out to be great beauties. Right? But they eventually become afraid of rejection by the establishment. They want to be a member of the old money class, you know? The idea of nouveau riche It's not for them. So being rejected by that upper class is another nightmare for them. And it spurs them on even more. They just keep working. Sometimes I think maybe they never quit. So they're forced to quit because they simply cannot keep up physically that level of fight. That's really what it is. Okay. Now the downside of this placement is that if pushed too hard, if they do not find a way to assimilate love into their lives, they become very cold, exacting, calculating, and very formal, unable to let go of the harmonizing process that Venus means. Because Venus is a genuine love for people. It's not a love for people based on what they are. It's just a genuine love for people. That's just really what it is. It's a genuine love for things. Now, that Venus is trapped in Capricorn. It starts off as nothing really, and it needs a long time to develop, so that any placement that is found in Capricorn really is not available to the individual in any real sense of the word until after the first Saturn return. Then they begin to understand what that Venus is, and they can only understand it as an external reality, something that is out there in the world. And it's only when people start finding them attractive, that's when their confidence begins to grow. Prior to that, it's all surrogate confidence. It's all performative. They are racked with insecurities. All it takes is one negative compliment to send the individual spiraling down a rabbit hole of insecurities. Very moody creatures. They're very moody, but the business-like face and the business-like demeanor hides all of that sensitivity. If you're a man who's journeying to the top of his world, because what Capricorn really signifies is a journey to the top, but it's not any type of journey. It's the journey that plays by the rules. Whatever the established rules are within that landscape, that's what Capricorn must play by. Because what it wants is not just to get to the top. It wants to get to the top and to be applauded by the establishment for its accomplishments. It wants to be a member of that establishment, so that its ways of getting to the top are limited. They must be socially acceptable. No underhanded tactics. Most Capricorns that engage in underhanded tactics, it leads to a fall. And Capricorn knows this. So they must take every rung of the ladder. They must suffer. They must go through that pain. Because that pain and that suffering represents a badge for them. It's an honor for them. So Capricorn wants to stand at the mountaintop in applause, where it can aggrandize itself. It can show off itself as master and ruler of all that it surveys. And it knows that it has earned that. And that is the important thing. Venus in Capricorn is the right to earn that Venus. Because it's not like these people have not been beautiful. They just could not accept it. Because that Venus must be externalized. So these are people who end up building something in external reality where that Venus is tied into. And sometimes it may just be money, the accumulation of money, because that's what Venus represents in today's reality. And other times it's much greater than that. It's some type of cooperation or business or whatever. And so they're never lacking in business ideas. They're afraid to try, but they're very courageous, meaning they keep trying. Even though 9 out of 10 times they will fail. And the failures are very painful for them. But there are very few as brave as these individuals. They pick themselves up and they keep going. And that is what guarantees the end result for them at the end of the day. Most of them are a success. Of course, the success doesn't come early. It comes with maturity. Because in maturity, they're able to strip away all the things that hinder them. All these insecurities and doubts. They have failed so many times, they no longer feel insecure anymore. They have been laughed at so many times. All the insecurity is gone. That's when they're free to succeed. And that's the essence of all that failure. That's really what it is. Now, to summarize, I want to construct an imagery for you. As an imagery to basically surmise what Venus in Capricorn really is all about. Imagine taking what's the beauty competition of today? Miss Universe, Miss World, whatever. Imagine taking the winner of that. Obviously, the winner must be, in some sense, very beautiful, right? Imagine taking the winner of that and stripping her of all of the paraphernalia, pouring garbage on this person, rolling them around in mud, filthy mud and all that, or filthy environments or whatever, and go dump them in the filthiest place of the world that you can imagine. Their challenge now becomes finding their way back to being Miss Universe or Miss World. Now, this is, under normal circumstances, this is a task that, is just ridiculous. Because the person that has been dumped in this filthy place, that is so far removed from everything that they've known so far in their reality, still remembers who they are. Everything else was taken away from them, but their memory of who they are was not taken away from them. So that the suffering really comes from the fact that nobody believes who they are. And it doesn't matter who they tell. The more they go about telling anybody, the more foolish people consider them to be. The more they're laughed at. And that laughing at process is so traumatic to them that it forces them to never want to show that face again. So they close that door and they never want to open it up again. So they steel themselves. It's almost like locking themselves up in a place and throwing the key away. So there's no room for that anymore within them. They now begin the process of genuine hard work that gets them back to that place where they fell from, to become Miss Universe again. This, in a nutshell, is the Venus in Capricorn story. The insecurity that they feel, the sense of rejection and all the doubts and insecurities comes from the fact that they still know who they are, but nothing around in their reality supports the notion of who they are. And so there's a mismatch, and that mismatch breaks them in a certain way. That's really what it is. That's what accounts for all of that. So that if you know a Venus in Capricorn, this is what they've been struggling with their whole life in one way or the other. It's always never the pure thing because it's all mixed up in the synthesis. But a single negative compliment regarding the way that they look could send them spiraling down. Don't do it.